My name's Xersai, and I have quite a few years playing just specifically Rek'Sai as my champion, and specifically top side for a good while now. I peaked Masters playing only top Rek'Sai, and so I do have a bit of experience with the pick, and I have quite a few games on the pick, so I definitely know a thing or two about it. And I'm going to be showing you guys today how I plan on getting back to Masters and how you guys can also succeed with Rek'Sai. Now, when we're talking about the champion, especially when we're talking about top lane, you actually have a couple options that you can go. You can either go, let's say, tank oriented, or you can go bruiser oriented. Personally, for me, I prefer playing bruiser, but I have much more success playing tank. So if I really want the LP, I usually play tank. When you have these two different play styles, you do have some trade-offs, let's say. If you can get ahead on either of these play styles, they're both very good. But being behind on both of these play styles, tank is obviously much more forgiving, and you can get away with a lot more things, and you can get back into the game easier. So if you ever find yourself in a sticky situation, in a game where you die level 3 or die level 4 because the guy had ignite and cheese you out of a kill or something like that, just go tank, and usually the game will go more in your favor than it would if you went bruiser, is what I've found. Now for bruiser, the best thing about that is you're able to push your advantage way more, it seems like to me. You're able to pressure side lanes much better than tank. And if you don't have much damage on your team that's fed, you know, if you have an ADC, or if you have a mid laner, let's say, that, you know, they're just really behind, they can't dish out damage, tank isn't going to do you any good because you're not going to be able to carry from a tank's perspective. If you're playing tank, you need someone to be there with you to help you. If you're playing bruiser, you kind of can take on a bit more of a carry role. But you can't always afford to go bruiser, you can't always afford to go tank. You need to decide which games are going to be the best for either, and which games and which playstyles you like more. It's definitely a preference thing and an adaptability thing. That's the thing with Rek'Sai. You have to be very adaptable to the champion. Okay, now let's talk about some items. Let's talk about items good for tank. So when I think of a good tank item, I think of these 5 items, okay? I think of Hollow Radiance and Sunfire. These are essential if you're going tank, because you need the Bombies wave clear. Then, usually you want to wrap it up second with Spirit Visage. After that, usually Unending Despair is really good as well, especially since they split it. So now, you can go, a very typical build will look like Sunfire, Spirit Visage, Unending. Or, it will look like Hollow Radiance, Thornmail, which is the 5th item, and then Unending. It just depends on the game and who you're fighting, and if you're fighting an AP champion top, but their whole team is mixed damage roughly, then you're gonna have to go Hollow Radiance. Then you're gonna need armor, and then you're gonna want to go Unending. Now, with this build, you can take, let's say, one of these items out and replace it with a bruiser item. Usually the best items in bruiser that you want to prioritize are either Titanic Hydra or Stridebreaker. Titanic Hydra gives you very good damage and very surprising burst to enemies that they usually don't expect, and Stridebreaker gives you the attack speed, which is nice, but it gives you a very good amount of mobility, which is very good for Rek'Sai, because your dash is very long, it's very telegraphed, and your knockup range is really small. So a lot of enemies can kite you out if you don't have anything to close that small gap. Now for bruiser items, like I was just saying, Titanic Hydra and Stridebreaker are both really good. But a few other items that you would also want to prioritize. One I found that's very nice is Spirit of Shoshin. One that I think is good, but I don't like as much because of the recent changes to making her burrowed Qin or unburrowed deal magic damage now, is Black Cleaver. I think Black Cleaver is still good. I think I'm doubting it a little too much. I'm actually starting to give it more and more tries as of right now. But I think it is still a very good item. especially if you pair it with one of the Tiamat items. So it's definitely not a bad choice. If you're going bruiser, a very solid build, for example, would be Titanic, Spear, into a Black Cleaver. That's a very solid build. You have very surprising damage. You're really tanky without any resistances. And then other items would be Death's Dance, Stark's Gauge, and Eclipse. These are all very solid items. Just pick and choose which one for each situation. Rek'Sai is a champion with a lot of options. You have way more options than most people even realize. You could build all sorts of stuff. So just try stuff out and see which of these items you like the most. I have a few other situational items that I very, very rarely build, but I do from time to time, usually for fun. And these are Heartsteel, Swifty Boots, which I'll get to boots in a second, Edge of Night, Sundered Sky, and Maw Malmortius. All of these items you can experiment with. They aren't the best. You usually can find better alternatives. The only one that sometimes will be the best is Heartsteel. But it's kind of a cheesy item in my opinion on Rek'Sai. And so that's just a case-by-case scenario. But all of these situation items are. And then for boots, obviously, we normally go either Merc Treads or Steel Caps. So here I have my matchup list I made the other day. And I'll talk about it. So here I don't have enough games versus these champions to really know. These games, dodge, and then the other ones, yeah. So every single matchup, you can definitely lose it, okay? These matchups that you win if you play well, okay? If they play well and you play well, you win, okay? This isn't you are guaranteed to win. This is, if you play right, you will win, okay? Oh, and obviously if, you don't get camped by the jungler, right? But if things go right and you play right, you will win. These matchups here, the even matchups, basically, as I say, these matchups, very difficult. You need to have a good, I'd say, probably 30, 40, 50 games on Rek'Sai, top lane, to really, kind of get a feel for these matchups. They can be difficult. You need to have patience. A lot of these matchups, I'll show you the runes, but a lot of these matchups, you're going to need, fleet footwork. Alright? Especially these range ones. Aurora, fleet's amazing. Quinn, fleet's really good. I found fleet to be actually really good versus Darius and Jace. And Wukong. A lot of these matchups, the fleet footwork is good, but I'll get into that in a second. These matchups, if you are not comfortable, I would dodge. Okay? If you're not comfortable on the pick, I would genuinely dodge. Because you are very hard to help. You can win, but it's not easy at all. Okay? You have a 40% chance of winning, which is not good. Okay? And that's if you do well. And then these matchups, I would just straight up dodge them. They are horrible. Okay? Especially this one. I'm very known for hating on Aatrox. I hate Aatrox with a passion as Rek'Sai. Most of these matchups up here, I have specific runes for specific matchups, right? So versus, this is a theory I'm making currently right now, but I'm thinking that how I'm going to climb is I'm going to run Grasp and Tank majority of the games. So all of these bad matchups are Grasp and Tank, okay, which is going to be majority of your games are going to be harder matchups because there are a lot of champions that can give you a really hard time. And then all of the tank matchups, so Cassante, Malphite, Maokai, Poppy, etc., I'm going PTA and going to try and shred their armor and deal extra damage to them and get them low and out-sustain them. All of these matchups, basically all of them, you can out-sustain. The only ones that you really have a hard time out-sustaining is sometimes Cho'Gath if he's good and patient, and Warwick for sure. This is a specific matchup where I'm thinking you take Ignite here. Okay, let's talk runes, okay? So I know on my channel I post things like Arcane Comet, I've done AP, I've done Conquer, Fleet, aftershock, grasp, I've done electrocute, I've done all this crazy shit, right? I've done PTA, I've done all these things, right? I just experiment and experiment and experiment. And that's because I like doing that, and I feel like this is one of the champions I can do it the most. And I've stated that a few times now, right? But your core runes, these are your 3, in my opinion, that are the best, and you should look to cycle through these, okay? Grasp, which should be your number 1. If you want to win, you want to go tank, okay? So you want to go grasp. That's going to be your most valuable one, okay? For bruiser, you have 2 options. You have either conqueror or fleet. I'm still working on PTA. I don't know if it's good enough yet or not versus the tanks, but that's something I'm still working on and still developing the I guess data of. I don't have enough games on PTA to really know yet. But for now, what I know, and what I know works, is Conquer and Fleet versus matchups for Bruiser. If it's a decent matchup, you know the matchup, it's okay. Go Conquer. If it's a hard matchup, go Fleet. The Fleet will provide you a bunch of healing and a bunch of mobility. It'll give you a lot of forgiveness when you're trying to farm. The Conqueror obviously gives you healing, but also gives you adaptive. The adaptive is really nice. It gives you damage. You like that a lot. Okay, so it took so much damage away from you. You need damage now. I found that it's easier to farm with double adaptive, and 2, you actually feel like you deal way more damage with double adaptive. So that I've been just running straight that. I don't think the attack speed's worth it at all. It makes sometimes this little oh, Motto went super slow. That's more of a skill issue kind of thing. But the double adaptive is way more useful in lane, in my opinion. So let's talk about level 1. Okay, level 1. You start W always. I've tried Q, it's not that good. Go W. Whenever you walk into lane, we're gonna assume that you're playing the grass playstyle. That's the more forgiving playstyle, and that's the one I would recommend for all of you guys. The Bruiser playstyle, the Conquer and Fleet Footwork one, I'm only recommending it for people that genuinely play Rek'Sai and wanna play Bruiser over tank, okay? But we're gonna say you're going Grasp for this example. You go into the lane, you start W level 1, you walk up and try to pressure with your W and get Grasp stacks. Whenever you knock up the minions, you get 25 Fury. Whenever you auto attack the minions, you get 5 Fury. Level 1, let's say, when you have 100 Fury, so a full red bar, right? You get 10% of your HP back. At level 18, it's 20%. But it scales up over game, of course. So, auto attacking the minions does not give you much Fury, but auto attacking champions gives you 25 Fury. So whenever you, let's say, hit the enemy champion, let's say they engage on you, like it's an Irelia, let's say she Qs the first 3 minions and then she Qs onto you. Well, you knock her up, you auto attack her, that gives you 50 Fury, and then you walk away. Okay? So you dealt a little bit of damage to her, she dealt a little bit of damage to you, but you heal some of your HP back, so it's not that bad. And the good thing about this is many champions don't have anywhere near the sustain that Rek'Sai does. So even if you take a bad trade, level 1, 2, or 3, over time during the lane, as long as you're able to find angles where you can hit the wave, you can get your HP back. So level 2, you take Q, you farm with your burrowed Q, you farm with your unburrow and try to hit the wave where you can. You're going to miss a lot of CS. You have to respect your enemy laner. Just get your XP, get your level ups. Because once you hit level 3, you become a champion. You become much more of a champion than level 1 and 2. Level 1 and 2, you are very weak. Level 3, okay? You have your get out of jail free card, your tunnel. You have your bite. The bite's very important because now you can knock up and bite the minions, which equates to 50 Fury. So that's half of whatever regen you have right now to get your HP back, and you can cycle that constantly. Your knockup's on a 4-second cooldown, and it takes about a second to cycle it. So it's every 5 seconds you get 25 Fury, and then every 10 seconds with your E you get 25 Fury, and add up the 5 Furies whenever you auto, you're able to accrue back health very consistently. And I wouldn't say slowly, it's pretty fast, but it seems slow in the moment, but it accrues very fast. At this point in the lane, before they recall and get their first item or whatever, you are looking to buy Bomby Cinder. That is a very big purchase for you. Whenever you buy Bomby Cinder, you actually get a giant amount of kill threat. And if you ever make a mistake, you can always lean back on your HP, because your HP scales into your passive, which lets you heal more, and by that time you'll probably be around level 6, 7, 8, and you'll have a much more respectable percentage to heal with. So once you have bombies, you're actually able to look for kill angles at that point. Now you need to be respectful. If you are fighting a champion that has Ignite, especially a champion that's very cocky, like let's say like a Set or an Aatrox or a Darius or an Olaf or something along those lines, you want to be a little respectful, because the cut to your healing will be very detrimental to you, and you need to have some respect for them. But over time, your playstyle should be, okay, I walk up, I burrow Q, I knock up, I auto attack, I Q, and then I bite. And then they'll try to fight me back, right? And so usually, if you can find an angle where they can't fight you back, sometimes you can walk away before you bite and concede your damage, but they don't hurt you. But a lot of times I just prefer taking the bite, because you have so much sustain. Unless they're going to kill you in that moment, you can afford to lose the HP, because you will keep whittling them down over and over and over again. You can look for this combo every 10 seconds whenever your E and your W are coming back up. And after time, if they get low enough, you can look for execute with your R. Now, during lane, it's very good to keep your tunnels set up behind you, especially if you're playing in a very aggressive position. So, if you are to an enemy's tower, potentially looking for a dive, you need to keep in mind that, hey, the jungler probably wants to come gank me. Hey, I should probably set up tunnels to make sure that no one kills me in the scenario. The only time you should die when you're in a position like that is if you mess up. Genuinely, your champion is, with bombies, is so tanky, so mobile, and has so much healing, you should not die unless you mess up. Now that's if you're in an aggressive scenario. Let's say you're in a passive scenario. You just gotta play back. A lot of times it just keep healing up. Sometimes try to poke with your burrowed Q. That'll take a very long time to whittle them down. But just try to stay healthy and try to get further and further into the game to where a point you can actually contest some of things. A lot of champs, it'll be very hard for you to deal with. Until you either get bombies, or sometimes you'll have to wait until you get Sunfire or Hollow Radiance. It just really depends on the matchup and how well you are playing and how well the enemy player is playing, and if your jungler is coming to help you and such. But now let's talk about you getting into mid game. Okay, you should be having, let's say, your Sunfire or your Hollow Radiance by now. You should have your boots by now. You should be trying to build towards your second item now, or your third, whatever. How ahead you are, how behind you are. That should be like generally where you're at, right? With tank Rek'Sai, with this grasp setup, you need to be playing for your team pretty hard. So it's really good to shove lanes and then rotate to your team. And I found that it's much more useful to play a peeling position for your AD carry or your mid laner, whichever one is more ahead. It's just play as peel. Let whoever, the Talon or the Zed or whoever, be scared that you're there, and then try to look for an angle, and then you do your combo, knock them up. And a lot of times, these assassins that go in on your ADC or your mid laner, well, now they're marked with you, right? So you mark them. If they get away, guess who's gonna kill them? Yeah, it's gonna be you. Now you're gonna kill them. Maybe get into their backline or get into a different angle where you're super tanky to disrupt the enemy team. A lot of times that is very helpful. Playing team fights with Xersai'S is much easier than bruiser, because bruiser, you're more the disruptor kind where you want to go in the back, but you can do that on tank. I just don't really recommend it. I would only do it if you're like genuinely very ahead and you think you can take like 2 or 3 people at once for like a prolonged period of time. But usually when you get to that point in the game, you want to make sure that like you are basically unkillable, because your champion generally is, with all tank items, you are insanely hard to kill. They have to put in an immense amount of damage into you just for you to die. So use that to your advantage. Set up tunnels around whatever objective you're playing for, or whatever team fight's about to happen. Set up tunnels so it's really easy for you to get away and not die, and get away with some BS play that the enemies are going to be pissed about and complain about in all chat. You know, position around your AD carry, your mid laner, make it really hard for the enemy jungler to get things done. You know, just play in a very nuisance way where a lot of times you can get your enemy or your allies out of jail with your initial knockup and help them do all this stuff, and then you're tanking all this damage and then you don't die just because you have all this mobility. You have all this tankiness that a lot of times you don't get punished for things. I have countless videos on my channel of me doing these really bullshit plays versus champions that should catch me, but they cannot catch me. Late game is basically the same deal. You're just trying to play for objectives. If you're playing tank and you get into late game, I would highly recommend that you pick up a Titanic Hydra. If you are, let's say a normal build of Sunfire, Spear Visage, Unending, which is very common, it happens very frequently for me, go Titanic after that. So number 4, go Titanic. A lot of times, enemies won't even bother with you until you're last, when you get to that point where you're so tanky. And so it's best just to go Titanic, so you actually become a threat again. You actually become a damage threat again, because you have so much damage through Sunfire and through Titanic. So just play for your objectives. Play the same way where you're being very obnoxious. You have a lot of tunnels set up around you, so it's very hard to kill you. And yeah, just be a nuisance on the rip, dude. Alright, well, I guess that's gonna be the end of my guide. I know Mad Max is definitely happy that I'm making this now, and I appreciate you guys coming by and watching. Yeah, hopefully you guys can play some Rek'Sai games and they go well for y'all in top lane and all that. If you guys want me to make a bruiser short, I'm gonna make it short. I'm not gonna make it as long. I'll probably make it like 3 or 4 minutes long. I can make a bruiser oriented guide for you guys. I just wanted to focus on tank because genuinely bruiser is way harder to play right now, and that's a big reason why I stopped playing Rek'Sai top for a little while, is because I'm not as big of a fan of tank as I am bruiser. I think bruiser's way more fun. It's way more fun to make videos out of it. But tank is just way better right now, and if you really want to succeed with the pick, you need to go tank, in my opinion. And if you guys want me to make a bruiser version, even though it's not the better version, if you guys want to see that, just let me know and I'll make it happen. I'll start working on it. Okay. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you in the next one. Okay. Deuces.